Welcome to Manga Machinations. This is episode 471, and this is the final installment for our October extravaganza on this year of 2023. This week we read and we're talking about some webtoons, so it's kind of a unique experience. My name is Darfox8. I am not your regular host. I am normally your live stream host, which I am live streaming now on youtube.com/mangamac.tv. But because I am hosting the podcast, I needed extra help. I needed to invoke the Darg experience because I have with me ARG Bombshell herself.
What's up, everyone?
Yes, that very quiet, polite voice was ARG Bombshell, or as I like to call her, Amber. Um, I kind of call her both things all the time. How you doing, Amber?
I'm doing pretty good. Since it's spooky season and I'm filling in, I'm gonna be the ghost host today.
Ghost host. What does that mean?
It's a haunted mansion reference, from Disney. I'm the
Oh,
ghost host.
oh, I never, I never been to Disney. I never heard of Disney. I don't know who they are.
Never heard of Disney? I don't believe that at all.
Yeah, no, yeah. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But first, I want to introduce more of our podcast. So, this Manga Mac podcast you listen to, it's kind of a book club we do for manga. We've been talking about manga for a long time, and we like to switch it up occasionally. And sometimes we do programming, such as Halloween programming in October. And today we're talking about webtoons, which we haven't really talked about. Um, Webtoons, primarily Korean comics. There are a couple of non-Korean artists that we'll talk about. Um, but Amber, you are on Korea Comics podcast, so this is kind of old news for you, right?
Yeah, what is this, yesterday? Come on now. So, yeah, what we're gonna be talking about today are mostly Korean comics, but one of the series is, I believe, American, but I don't know for sure. I can't just judge by the names, and there isn't a lot of information about the authors on the platform.
Yeah, but it's primarily Korean as far as we can tell. Hey, I see a Tyler in the chat. What's up, Tyler? And a General Grissom. Welcome to the live stream. I'm actually going to hit the button and switch over to the live stream feed because right now we're on the no camera feed. Bam. Oh wait. Oh, there you are. Okay. Amber was here a second and she disappeared, but now she's back. Okay, so
I disappeared like the ghost host that I am.
yes, you did. Yeah. So I am Darfox, your host today, and on the left side of the screen you're seeing Amber, my backup, my very very valuable backup. So once again, thank you so much for tuning in. First thing I want to do now that I switched over to the live stream is I want to thank all our coffee donators, and you'll see an image right now. So we have a coffee. Well, actually, this is crooked. What's happening? There, I fixed it. We have a coffee, ko-fi.com/mangamac. And on there, you could donate money to us. You can see all of our previous donators, Deluid, Vicky Doughton, Mia, Dr. Meltface, YA, Poor Mexican 72, Philip, Liquid 002, and Exteen. Some of those are repeat offenders, meaning that they have given us multiple coffees, so that is very, very generous of them. Thank you so much, everybody who has donated stuff to us. It really helps us out because, like I said, we've been doing this for a long time, and we pretty much buy all the manga. If it's not available for free, if it's not available in like a streaming platform, we buy the manga and we read them. So it's a huge, huge help for us. Thank you very much. And now we're back. Say hi, Amber.
Still here.
Yeah, actually, on the podcast stream, I added the Soju Wanna Read manhwa logo to the middle of the screen. So I want to take this moment to kind of talk about that podcast a little bit, Amber, if you don't mind, um, because you have a few episodes out now, but you have more episodes recorded. It's not like I've learned that we're the only podcast that record, and we put up the podcast like the next day. Other podcasts they kind of record and they plan stuff out and they have like these schedules out. So tell me a little bit about your schedule and about the podcast, please.
Yeah, so we focus primarily on Korean comics or manhwa, and we read them on a variety of different platforms. But so far, we've mostly talked about Eyes Press printed titles, just because it's still a relatively new imprint. We have 4 episodes out currently. We actually just filmed probably about a week ago or like half a week ago the kind of special episode about New York Comic Con, and then our 5th episode on the Shint Reader's Viewpoint, which will be coming out very soon. But we also sometimes cover counterpart features to these comics. Like when we read Business Proposal, we also watched the K-drama and talked about that. But it's a fun time. It's myself and Microwavy or Marion, and we have a great time. The episode 3, we also had a guest, which was Deb Aoki. That was a lot of fun, and we hope to have a lot more guests soon.
Yes, Microwavy was actually originally planned to be on this episode, so it was gonna be a full crossover of Manga Mac Soldier Wanna Read Manhwa. But unfortunately they're very busy today. They're busy actually this whole weekend, and I really wanted to squeeze them in, but I also didn't want to like really stress them out with like super crazy scheduling. So Mark Wavy has also been on the Manga Mike podcast in the past, so we love to have him on another time in the future. But it was not to be this time. It's just a dark experience this time, just you and I. Tyler wants a
They will
refund. You're
always
not
be
gonna get
missed,
one.
but we got this. No, we can't give a refund.
No refund. Well, I'll get a refund for other people, but not Tyler. Not you. I see you around there. Okay. So, somebody mentioned something in the chat. Deluid asked me, how am I feeling from COVID? So that's kind of gonna segue into a little bit of a talk about our trip to New York. So, we went to New York, and you would have noticed if you follow the YouTube channel because we had a couple of vlogs where we talked about it. It was a pretty, fun trip overall. Definitely didn't do all the stuff that I wanted to do, but it was still fun. The big problem with the trip was the fact that when I came back, I instantly got sick, and then I took a test, and sure enough, it was COVID. So this is my first time getting COVID. And getting COVID when you go to a con or you go on a trip is pretty common. I think I got it from the plane trip. If I mean, I could have got it anywhere really, but because my friends that you know, I we s- we slept in the same hotel room. We were like together for 4 days straight. They didn't get it, and we went to the con, and we did all the same stuff in the con. We went to the same restaurants. The only time we parted ways is when we went on a plane trip. We went on different plane trips. So I'm thinking that's the likely corporate of where I got it was the plane. But like I said, it really could have been anywhere. So I've been suffering from the COVID for a little more than a week now. I'm a lot better. I still got like a little bit of a cough, and I'm actually going to take a test today to see if it's still in my system. I think it's still in my system. I think it's going to be in my system for 2 or 3 weeks, which makes it a very very annoying. But besides the COVID, which is obviously a bummer, it was a pretty fun trip. I saw Amber twice over there because Amber also went like we kind of planned a parallel trip because Amber planned to go with her husband and a couple of her friends. Excuse me, I was coughing. Um, so we met up once when we were on the con floor, and we met up a second time when we had lunch on Saturday. I mean, how was we actually haven't talked too much about the trip because we haven't been able to hang out because they had COVID. So like, how was your trip in general? How was New York for you?
Uh, in general, it was a pretty good trip. I'd like to say that everything went perfect and great, but that's never the case on traveling. um, So our one of our friends that was supposed to come with us had to cancel last minute, unfortunately, and then our other friend that came with us left halfway into the second day there. So it ended up just being myself and my husband on the second day, or sorry, the second half of the second day, and then the third and fourth day. We also did not pack very good shoes and we're not used to walking around so much. I definitely walked more in those 4 days than I had the entire past month. Like it was a big toll that I was not prepared for. But I absolutely loved the show floor and we got to do so much stuff. I actually only went to the show on Friday. So the other 3 days I was just doing fun New York stuff. But we had a lot of fun. It was a real blast.
Yeah, I'm actually jealous of how much good food you ate because we were there pretty much the same time. But and I like all the food we ate. It was good food, but you really went to all this like fun, weird, trendy spots. You just had a bunch of random good stuff that um, you know I didn't have, but I'm proud to
You
say
missed
yes.
you missed out on the best dumplings of my life.
Where was that?
They were the fried dumplings at Super Taste, and you like coat them in this delicious chili oil.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
even care that I had to eat them in the pouring rain. Like it was delicious.
Yeah. Um, oh, I was gonna mention one thing, but I totally blanked. Um, well, whatever. If it's important, it'll come to me. Maybe. Um, I did have soup dumplings at Deluxe Green Bowl, which is a pretty famous spot in Chinatown, and that's where we had our lunch. Our lunch that was kind of a disaster because there was a lot of people that were invited, and most of them couldn't make it. But that's not too bad because the core group of me and my two friends, Amber and her husband, and then Exene, a member of the community, were able to make it. So that's plenty of people to have a fun lunch together. But the big disaster part was that I was like an hour late to the restaurant because me and my friends got lost in the subway system. And that was moving really slow. You mentioned how walking was like a huge, um, like walking was a really exhausting experience in New York. It was probably twice as much for me because I'm a lot heavier than Amber. Um, and I knew it was gonna be the case, but I was like, okay, I did all I could to condition myself to be in walking, walking ready. I wasn't walking ready, but I tried my best. Um, and man, my feet were raw. My heel was. I came back and I had like terrible Achilles tendonitis. So that's one of the reasons why we were so late because um, essentially when we got on the subway system, and this is really embarrassing to admit, but we got on the right train, so we would have been there on time, maybe even a few minutes early. Um, but we panicked because we read the map wrong. So we said, "Oh shit, we're on the wrong train." So we got off the train, and at that point, we got on a different train and went in a different direction. And unfortunately, it wasn't as simple. If you don't know how like subway systems are set up, usually the platform, there's a platform that takes you one direction, and then you could get on another platform that takes you in the opposite direction. Basically, the train going in the opposite direction. Um, Unfortunately, it wasn't that simple because a lot of like the opposite directions were closed down because there was a lot of maintenance and stuff. So we were basically trying to read all these maintenance notes and telling us where to go. And we ended up taking like 3 or 4 different trains, and we finally got back on the original train that we were supposed to. And it required us actually leaving a couple of stations and walking a couple of blocks and getting other stations because, like I said, they wouldn't go in that direction. So me moving as slow as I was moving really just slowed that down to a crawl, because I think if my friends were on their own, because my friends are pretty fit and they move pretty fast, and my friends were on their own, they probably would have been like 30 or 40 minutes late, kind of tops. But because they're moving with me, ended up being like a whole hour late, and the whole time it was raining. And the really like sad, embarrassing thing about it, because I mean, if shit happens, we're late. I wouldn't really feel. I mean, I feel bad, but I wouldn't feel as bad as I do now, because the whole time it was raining, and because not everybody for the reservation has shown up. Um, you guys had to wait out in the rain while you're waiting for me, right? For the most of the time you're waiting, you're like literally standing in the rain.
Yeah, we were standing on the rain. And luckily, I was able to, right before we went to the restaurant, we found a hardware store that had like super cheap umbrellas for like cheaply made umbrellas for like $5. So I was able to get like a little bit of protection, but at that point, I had already been soaked from like walking around all morning in Chinatown. But it was still like okay. We still had a good time, and like I don't think you need to feel bad about it. We still got to have lunch together and meet up and everything. The subway is like definitely a little confusing if you're not used to it, but I will say that Apple Maps absolutely saved me on my phone because not only did it update for the weekend schedule, but it updated for the construction and gave me like everything that we needed. So it was really helpful. But then also because of all the horrible walking, the third and fourth day of the trip, I definitely took a lot more like Lyfts and Ubers than I normally would have, just because it was like so much. Like you and I do not live in a walking city, so that's it's definitely a big change of pace for both of us.
Yeah. Our hotel was pretty much right next to Times Square, so we didn't have to really travel far if we wanted basic food or just any kind of entertainment. So thankfully, we didn't have to resort to any Ubers except from coming and going from the airport. It's one of the benefits of winging it is that we don't have plans to be in certain places, unlike Amber who like had a whole itinerary. So she had places she wanted to be and needed to be. My friends and I, we'd roll out of bed like late morning and be like, I guess we should go eat something, and then we'd walk one block and just like eat anywhere, and it was all good food. But like I said, I was a little jealous of some of the stuff that Amber got that I didn't get. Um,
I mean, it was like 10 a.m. Friday morning, which is when the con opened, and I messaged you. I'm like, "So you on your way yet, buddy?" And you're like, "Oh no, I'm in bed still." I'm like, "What are you
yeah,
doing? Get out here!"
we had rough nights. Um, we weren't out that late, but when we'd get back, we would play Switch and drink for local, which is a tradition for me and my friends. So a couple of our nights were pretty rough. One night, my friends kind of peer pressured me to drinking two Four Locos, and that I'm never gonna do that again because that left me in really bad sorts. Thankfully, I didn't really wake up with hangover because I'm pretty good at drinking water and stuff like before going to bed. Uh, so I was able to hydrate my brain, I guess.
Now we know your limits. Two Four Locos.
Two Four Loko. Yeah, I mean, I think that the issue is that the Four Locos are they're the really big cans, they're the tall boys. I think I was drinking too slow for too long, so I ended up just kind of getting in a hangover while I was drinking, if that's possible. I'm not a big drinker, so I don't know how drinking works. I don't know how the drunkers live.
How do numbers work?
Yeah.
Now the actually, yeah, that reminds me. You and I have never had a drinking night. That should change. But the last time
I
I
hope
had
you
a
like
Four
Four Loco.
Loco, well, I actually like I got a Four Loco as a joke for my husband probably like a month or two ago now, because it's like a joke that if you like you ask to get a surprise at the store and you don't say what you want, it's just a surprise, like you're gonna get a Four Loco, but he doesn't want to drink it, so I ended up drinking it. But so like I ended up just like smashing the whole thing, and we had a bunch of people over for rock band, and I played guitar a lot better on Four Locos, so maybe
Well,
it's
there
not
you
so bad.
go. There you it's see, it's good for you.
In
Manga,
a not good for me way.
Manga Mac official stance about for local. It's good for you. It accentuates your talents. But yeah, there's a couple other stuff we could talk about in New York, but I think we should just move on and go to our first segment, which is this is kind of an unofficial like introductory segment. But our first real segment is what you've been reading or watching, if you watched anything. So Amber, I know you're always a voracious reader. You're always consuming manga or comics or something. So what can you tell me you've been doing this week?
I mean, you said it. I read a lot of things. So I didn't do a whole lot of gaming that I normally would do this week. So my list for reading is kind of long. And it was actually pretty long the last time I got to be on the show too. But I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I'm just gonna list them out, and if you have any questions about them, you can just ask me more.
Sure.
So for manga, I read just this week, Given Volume 8, Moriarty the Patriot Volume 13, Shy Volume 4, Sasaki and Miyano Volume 9, Today's Menu for the Emiya Family Volume 5, Spy Family Volume 10, Go with the Clouds North by Northwest Volume 6.
What?
Yeah, finally, it's been a year. um, Mashal Magic and Muscles Volume 3, Twisted Wonderland Book of Heart Slab Yule Volume 1, The Invisible Man and His Soon to Be Wife Volume 2. And then, of course, I don't just read manga, I read other stuff too. So for other comics, I read Catwoman One Bad Day, Carmilla the First Vampire, and of course, like a ton of daily manhwa episodes on Webtoon and Monte Comics and things like that. But then I also read an actual novel in its entirety this week,
A book.
which was, yeah, a full book. And it was actually pretty funny. So it's the Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix, and it's won Goodreads Best Horror and a Hugo Award for Best Novel in 2021, but it's like a horror meta self-aware book.
Right. Yeah, I assume it's final girls meeting together and talking about their shitty serial killer situations.
Pretty much, but it's a horror book. Things got to go off rails.
Oh no.
There's got to be a final girl.
Oh wow. It's like the final girl tournament of champions.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, that's not exactly what happens, but serial killers, final girls, it adds up.
Cool. Well, as far as the books goes, that sounds kind of cool. I guess I don't know. I'm very anti-book on this podcast. It's all about manga on here.
I mean, I just really liked how like self-aware meta it was. So there's like a lot of direct rip-off references. Like each of the final girls has, of course, their own story of how they became a final girl. And like, for example, there's one that's a direct rip-off of Scream. And so like her killer is the ghost. And like the film
Yep.
franchise that she gets is called Stab, which in the Scream movies, the film franchise is called Stab. So like it's pretty funny.
That's good. Yeah. Is there a? I assume there's a. What do you call him? A Jason Voorhees kind of analog.
Yeah, there is definitely a Friday the 13th one and a Halloween one, and Silent Night is like the main character.
Cool. Cool. Now, I do want to ask you a little bit about Go with the Clouds. I guess no spoilers because I'm gonna eventually borrow your copy and read it. But is this another volume sponsored by the tourism agency, or is this one going to have some plot in it?
There is a little bit of tourism. Without spoiling, Ray ends up going back to Japan for a little bit, and there's kind of
What?
like a little bit of touring for that.
Oh, a little bit of Japan
Uh,
tourism. Okay, cool.
yeah, not so much Iceland. Well, actually, no, he leads a little bit of a tour in Iceland, so there's a little bit of that too still. Um, but yeah, that series, we've been waiting for this volume for 13 months. According to my Goodreads, that's when we read the previous volume. So until just this past couple of weeks, our video that we did for Go with the Clouds was still very much relevant.
Yeah.
uh,
As late as I was putting it up, it was still relevant.
but I mean, I like wait. I don't mind waiting for this series. I think it definitely takes time to develop this kind of mystery story that they're building. And I do think that you will be interested to see what happens. I can't say like anything really about the plot of that volume without spoiling it. So
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, so I guess we'll find out what's up with Michitaka, or at least for like what's up for now. So a little bit of like what we can find out about Michitaka, I guess.
Cool. Now, there is something you watch, and I know you watch this because I forced you to watch it.
Yeah, you messaged me yesterday and you're like, I need you to watch this first episode with me. And I'm like, I guess I will watch the thing, even though I was like passing out on my couch.
And
So we watched,
it wasn't just a 20-minute episode of anime like usually. It was like 60 minutes. Like it was like 70 minutes of anime.
plus like a couple technical issue times that extended the time too.
Yes. So
It's okay though.
yeah. So what we watched was Pluto, the new Netflix adaptation of Naoki Urasawa's Pluto manga. Now I didn't really set anything up for Amber. I kind of explained a couple things after the fact. It's a pretty self-explanatory story as far as well, there's a mystery, so obviously that part's mysterious. But as far as the genre, it's kind of just a detective story, set in a sci-fi universe with robots and AIs and stuff like that. But I didn't really explain to her the whole like Tezuka aspect, where this is basically a reimagining of Astro Boy. Astro Boy being Osamu Tezuka's famous action adventure manga about the robot called Adam, that he fights crimes and saves the day. And there's a famous storyline in the Astro Boy's comic called World's Strongest Robot, where a robot called Pluto shows up and he starts challenging all the world's strongest robots to a fight. He's like, I'm the world's strongest robot, so I'm going to beat your ass. And Astro Boy is one of the world's strongest robots, so they eventually have to fight. But basically, all the robots who have never appeared in the story before, like they're all unique to the storyline, they start showing up and they're like, "Oh, you can't beat me! I'll beat you!" And one by one, Pluto beats all the world's strongest robots until he finally has to showdown with Astro Boy. Um, and Pluto kind of reimagines that into kind of like a murder mystery, where all of the world's most advanced AIs are getting killed off, and also like human um, roboticists or people who are involved with like the robot movement in some way are also getting killed off, which is kind of creating a deeper mystery because robots aren't supposed to harm humans, not supposed to be capable of that. So if this is one assailant that's killing robots and humans, this is a huge deal in the lore of this world. And the main character is a Europol detective called Gesik. I believe that's how we pronounce his name. And he's also a robot. He happens to be one of these advanced robots because he's like the world's most advanced detective AI. And he's a pretty kind of cool, no nonsense character. Pretty compassionate guy, but very serious, straightforward. Um, and Yeah, I watched the first episode, and I'm a huge fan of the manga. In fact, it's one of my favorite manga ever. And I'll say I was pretty pleased with it. I don't mind the use of CG it has in it because the 2D animation of it looks pretty fresh. Amber, I don't know if you agree that the anime in general just had a good production on, like, good presentation to it.
Yeah, I thought it looked pretty crisp. I went into this episode completely blind. I haven't read Pluto. I didn't read any summaries or anything before the episode. I don't know what's going to happen in the rest of the series. Um, Generally, I was interested, but I don't know like how excited I am to continue watching it, but I would continue watching it. I think the most important, or not important, the most interesting part for me was the story with North Number Two, but obviously he's not the main character. So, and we didn't really get a whole lot of Gesicht in the episode, so I was kind of like a little thrown for a loop with the side story taking more of like the major role in it. Um, but yeah, I mean, it wasn't that bad. It did look really nice and crisp. I was also like trying not to pass out because I was so tired while we were watching it. So I'm sure I missed some things.
It was unfortunately one of those situations where like this would be good for our content. We could talk about it, but it has to happen right now. If we're gonna do it, it has to happen right now because like Amber had prior engagements in like 90 minutes, and then today she was too busy to do it because she literally had to, travel from point A to point B and stuff like that. So I said, let's do it right now. Let's do it right now. You're like, okay. So I'm glad you watched it. I think if you don't watch it, it's fine. But I do think it's a great series. And there's a bunch of characters obviously you haven't met because there's other robots that are being targeted as well that you haven't met. And I think you really enjoy some of those stories. The North Number Two story is a very famous story in the manga because for a couple of reasons. First of all, it happens pretty early in the manga. I think it's like the first volume or second volume where it appears. Um, and second of all, it's one of Naoki Urasawa's tricks or recurring things that he does. Um, a lot of storytellers and manga, they do that thing where they take a break for the main character. They go somewhere else to show you something. But Naoki Urasawa is kind of famous for it because he does these very um, emotional kind of mini stories with these characters you haven't really met before. Um, and they're usually very emotionally cathartic. He does a lot with a little. In just one chapter, he introduces you to a character. He kind of makes you fall in love with them a little bit, and then at the end, sometimes he dies, so it's really tragic and sad. And North Number Two is one of people's favorite version of that. Um, yeah, I like that chapter as well, or that storyline. It's very nice. It also has a reference to Blackjack, which is one of Osamu Tezuka's um, most famous works. So it's a fun Tezuka kind of like the whole thing is a big homage to Tezuka through like the eyes of Naoki Urasawa, which is pretty fun. Um, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with the first episode. I'm excited to watch more. I'll be interested to see if this anime kind of breaks through and kind of becomes, I don't want to say like mainstream popular or anything like that, but if a lot of I think Netflix is a great place for a lot of people to discover anime because a lot of people who don't typically watch anime sometimes watch Netflix anime because they just watch anything on Netflix and they're just looking for something to watch and they're just bored. I think a lot of anime that's been on Netflix have kind of got that effect. Like Seven Deadly Sins got that a little while back when it was pretty popular when it first came out. And that was mostly because I think it was just on Netflix and it was a pretty high quality show in general back in the day. So I'm hoping this one kind of gets that traction because it's one of those anime that doesn't have a lot of like the anime bullshit the anime haters like talk about. It's pretty straightforward story. There's not a lot of like chibi jokes and like whoopee wapoo. I just grabbed this girl's boob by accident. Whoopee wapoo. It's like it it's not really that kind of story. So
How'd that sound effect go again?
whoopee wobble. You know, and that's what men say when they accidentally grope women. It's a
Accidentally. Yeah, the series definitely had a much more serious undertone. And reading a little bit more about it right before we got started today, like it definitely should have a more serious undertone if it's supposed to be kind of like a detective story and a mystery about this particular Mont Blanc bot at the beginning.
yeah. Funny thing is that listeners of the podcast have been like biting their nails the whole time, wondering if Seamus is gonna show up, because famously, we actually reread Pluto really recently on the podcast just like a month ago, and Pluto's one of those stories that Seamus had a 180 turn on because Seamus is a relatively big fan of Naoki Urasawa. He's enjoyed his stories. We started the podcast because we wanted to talk about Billy Bat, and I've told the story before. Billy Bat is like a random, really crazy story, and Dagazu and Seamus and I were reading it. So let's talk about it on a podcast, and that's how this manga podcast started. But Seamus revisited it recently, and he was way more critical about the politics in it. You got a little bit of it in the first episode, but they talk about like this Persian War, because the robots were sent to war to fight all other robots. And do general peacekeeping stuff, right? But the problem with the story is that it's a very heavy parallel to the Iraq War after 9/11. And that comparison does not work at all. Like that comparison, like it really paints the story in a way more irresponsible, almost apologetic view of the Iraq War because it has a lot of characters who went to war and did terrible things, and they're like, I'm so sad about the bad thing that we did, um, which is just like this really like annoying genre of fiction of like sad soldiers who who killed babies and come back to, you know, to back to America, and they're like, oh, I'm so sad I killed babies. Please feel sorry for me, kind of thing. And Pluto, I think, inadvertently kind of has some of that, because all of these robots were sent with the peacekeeping force to this conflict that has, again, heavy parallels to the Iraq War conflict, which was basically a war crime perpetrated by the U.S. that we never had any repercussions for. Um, and Seamus was extremely vocal about how bullshit it was. But you know, Seamus is like, uh, he's a American hating Irish. So what can you expect? He hates Americans. You know what I'm saying? He's not on this podcast, so I couldn't say that. If you were on the podcast right now, he would. Now hold on now. That's what he is. um, but yeah, I, I I still love Pluto, but I do recognize a lot of like the the silly politics in it, and I think it's one of those unfortunate things where I think the core of the story is a detective story and kind of the story about these robots basically finding humanity and stuff like that. Um, and that core of the story gets sullied by the political stuff that gets put into it. It doesn't really make sense. Doesn't really work out the way the author wanted it to. So it's an unfortunate. I would call it a flawed masterpiece, because I like it as much that much that I would want to call it a masterpiece. But I do recognize that the whole political aspect of it is just bonkers. It's really silly. It doesn't make sense the way they portray it. But yeah, that's the mini rant for Pluto. Anime looks really fresh. I'm happy with it. I want to watch more. And Amber, if you do end up watching more, I'd be interested to hear about it.
Yeah, if I do, I'll let you know for sure.
Yeah, I won't force you to watch it with me, because then it'll be like, oh, when are you available, Amber? I'm always gonna be like, you know, texting her and, you know, like bothering her, and like we have to carve out part of our day, and none of us want to be there. And you know, we know what I'm saying. Come on.
I will always carve out part of my day for you.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, but I think this is good as I'm gonna definitely watch it later on, and maybe Amber will too, and we just have our own casual conversations about it eventually.
Did you watch anything else fun this week?
Did I watch anything else? No, I don't think I have. I've been sick, like I said, these past week or so, and I kind of dedicated my time to playing video games. I completed a bunch of video games that I was like almost done with, which I won't really talk about in the podcast because I don't really have much to say about it. So it's been, even though I've been sick, it's been fun to kind of churn through a couple of my backlogs that I was just, you know, these games that I were like 90% done with them. And I just needed like the last, you know, 4 hours or whatever to like, you know, wrap them up. So I've been working hard on video games. That's what I've been doing. Um, but yeah, besides that, I think we're ready to move on. Amber, do you have anything else?
Not particular. I mean, as far as other things I watched, I caught up on the second season of Spy Family, and last night I watched the new Five Nights at Freddy's movie, and
Oh.
I didn't really care for it.
Oh.
Well, the only reason I watched it was for Matthew Lillard. I played the game like once or twice back in like 2015, 2016, and hated it. But my real question is why Nebraska? And I guess if you've seen that, you'll understand. But I don't understand. So it was okay, but I definitely would not watch it again.
Yeah, I'm not like a huge Five Nights at Freddy guy, but I do. I'm kind of curious about the movie, because the video games are just jump scare machines. They're just like blah, jump scare, blah. It's just like
Yeah,
it's like
pretty much.
it's a Jack in the Box essentially. And I'm curious how they will adapt that to a narrative. And I hear they have like a good director and stuff like that. So, um, you know, it seems like it's not a shitty movie. Maybe just not for everybody.
I did start a really cute kind of like Japanese folklore inspired game today. That's like it's definitely a cozy like crafting, sell stuff at a market kind of game with like hiding from some secret agents at a few points. but it's called Mineko's Night Market, and it's adorable.
Okay, because you mentioned that, I actually thought I should mention that as well. Here, actually, let me pull up my notes. Um, I started. I think it's called Learning Hiragana to Survive Battle or something like that. It's a edutainment game. That's basically like an RPG Maker game, um, where instead of fighting monsters, you're fighting Japanese characters, and you gotta pick the noise that the character makes, the the Japanese letter makes, to attack it. Otherwise, it won't take any damage. So basically, little by little, you're learning the characters. And there's multiple of these games. There's a hiragana game, there's a katakana game, and there's a kanji game. And I plan on going through all of them. I've been playing the hiragana game, and here, let me. The game like tells you, okay, time to pull out pen and paper. I'm like, oh shit, what the fuck? I'm gonna have to make notes and study. The game is basically like a fancy version of flashcards, where it brings up a flashcard in the form of an enemy on screen, and you have to choose the correct answer, and you pick up the next flashcard, and it's essentially, it's that kind of learning process of repetition and randomization. I think I said that right. Of
You did.
of flashcards, and kind of uses that in an RPG setting. So right here, we'll put up to the camera. I'll send Amber a picture later because my crazy stream setup actually doesn't allow me. So it says, "Hello, I am Dark Fox," and it says 46 hiragana, 25 extra by adding strokes to some. So there you see the basic vowels at A, E, I, O, U, and then the ka, ki, ko, ke, ko, and all the. This is me trying to practice writing it. Although that's like the weakest thing in the hiragana game, is that when it practice writing it kind of gives you two different scripts for it, because kind of like how a font might draw a letter differently in English. You can write characters slightly differently, and connect some of the strokes together, kind of like cursive. And the game is giving me both of them at the same time. Is really confusing me because it will show it in the plain characters, and then it will switch to the cursive style character, and it's really hard for me to write them. I wish it showed both of them like side by side so that I can compare and contrast, but it's not the perfect learning tool, but it's been pretty fun. I'm somebody who has never learned Japanese. I've just heard Japanese, a lot of my life through anime and films and stuff like that. So it's fun connecting some of these dots. I've learned, I think, 25 hiragana so far. And there's 46 of them, so I'm a little more than halfway. So I think I still have quite a bit to go, but I try to play it every single day to kind of get that practice, that repetition. But unfortunately, when I got sick, I just didn't feel like booting it up. So I've missed like 3 days in a row, but I gone back to it. So just kind of to try and make the habit of going back to it so that I can get that repetition and memorize these characters.
Just gotta set like 20 minutes every morning for it.
Every morning, I wake up 5 minutes before I'm supposed to be at work. 20 minutes every
That's
morning.
fair.
20 minutes.
See, for my work days, I wake up at 8, and since I work from home, I'll lay in bed until 8:30 and then get dressed. And then by 8:45, when I'm supposed to be clocked in, I'm at my computer.
Oh shit! Dogs was in the chat and he just sent me some Japanese. Let me see if I could translate it.
Decipher it.
These characters are not well. Some of these characters might be hiragana. Oh, actually, they might be hiragana I haven't learned yet. Okay, that third character, the second to last character, is. One second. Eh. Got him. Eh. Yeah, so I'm going to show on stream where I'm at. So I'm up to the za ji zu ze zo. It's not the second to last character. It kind of looks like it, but I guess it's not perfect. Dagazu will have to quiz me afterwards. After I finish the game, he could quiz me. But for now, it's just cruel and unusual punishment to try and quiz me. I'm a sick man.
The point is that you're trying to learn, and this is a good resource for you.
It's a fun it's a fun little tool. Yeah, it's I don't expect that I'll actually be able to learn Japanese in any fluid capacity. But this is already filling some gaps that I already knew about for the Japanese language, and it could prime me if I want to do some other kind of learning in the future. You gonna try it, Amber? Huh? You gonna try it?
Yeah, I have all 3 games.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I feel like the second you try it, you just gotta go blow right past me. You're like you're just way more studious than I am.
Once I get into it, I like learning about languages of like all kinds of languages, really. But there's also a game that I think I downloaded at the same time I downloaded those called Influent, and there was like a special pack for Japanese. But basically, from at least what I saw of it, you get to go around a house and it'll like tell you the like whatever language you're studying, the words around the house that like goes with it, and there's like mini games and stuff.
Cool. Oh, Dagazu is going to bed. Good night, Dagazu.
Good night, Dakazu.
Dagazu is extremely jet lagged, so he's been going to bed at like 9 p.m. like an old man. All right, I think we're done with our segment, so we're gonna move on. Before we move on to our main segment, I wanna introduce what we're gonna do next week. Next week we're gonna be reading Witches. Actually, I totally screw up because I don't have any of the information. So let me see if I can pull it up right now. A little bit of live podcasting for you folks. Okay, it's by Daisuke Igarashi, and it is called Witches: The Complete Collection. So that's gonna be our one shot for next week. We're probably gonna record our podcast and stream it out Saturday. That's our normal day. Today's Sunday because it was unique, and then it should be up Sunday or Monday. So check that out, please. When we come back from our break, we will be talking about webtoons, including Killstagram, Scroll If You Dare, and Webtoons at Midnight. All right. Look forward to that. Please stick around, and we will see you in a few minutes. All right. 1 second. Welcome back to Manga Machinations October Extravaganza Finale. As I said before the break, we are talking about some webtoons, including Killstagram, Scroll If You Dare, and Webtoon at Midnight. Secret about these 3 is that 2 of these 3 are actually anthologies. There are multiple stories, multiple artists, which is actually pretty cool because that means we can just sample a bigger helping of different artists and different styles of horror. The only one that's a full-on story from beginning to end is Killstagram. But I want to start off the podcast or the segment by tossing it over to Amber and asking Amber, which one do you want to talk about, Amber?
I think that we should do the longest, most individual story first, which would be Killstagram.
Killstagram. Okay, cool. Let me switch over to our live feed right now. Yeah. Where'd you go, Amber? There you are. Every single time I switch, every single time I switch to the feed, your camera blips and you disappear for a second.
I'm the ghost host. It's fine.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Excuse me, I was coughing there. Like I said, I'm still not 100% over COVID, but I do feel a lot better. Just that lingering cough. It sticks with you for a little while, right? It's annoying.
It sure does. I think I finally noticed that my cough had gone away by the time we went to New York, and I had it in the first week of August.
Yeah, and you went October, like mid October to New York. So yeah, it's basically 2 whole months and change. Um, so Amber, what do you want to talk about? Oh, you said Killstagram. Yeah, my bad.
Yeah,
My
Killstagram or hashtag Killstagram.
yeah. The full name is Hastagram. That's the full name. One goofy thing about Killstagram is that the fake Instagram that they talk about is called uh Kstagram. How is it pronounced? It's like K. It's really. Did they just say Instagram, or obviously it's not called Killstagram in the story of the book, but that was very confusing to me how they would change it to K. Is it Korea Instagram? Is I couldn't get it.
That's how I understood it. I mean, like, at least here in the US, we a lot of times will abbreviate it or like abbreviate different Korean things as like K-pop, K-comics, K-drama. Like, so I kind of took it like that, and I felt like it was probably a translator liberty that they did that as well.
Yeah, so Killstagram is a story of Remy Do.
Remy do.
Yeah, I kept us. My brain wants to say Dore, but that's basically her username. She played out her name. Remy Do is a very beautiful young woman that has kind of a dark past, but when we introduced to her, she's kind of like a vain person who has this huge Instagram following. I'm just gonna call it Instagram, because that's what it is. Um, and this Instagram following is I say that this book, as dramatic and as wacky as it can get, it's generally pretty savvy about kind of internet culture, dogpiling, canceling people. It's pretty savvy about how a lot of this stuff would work. It's just kind of hidden to like a ridiculous extent in the story. Um, but essentially, her audience is portrayed as they're very obsessed with her, and sometimes they're already protective of her. Meaning, if she has beef with somebody, they will go onto that person's account and dogpile on them and basically online bully them. So her online presence isn't really always portrayed as like a good thing. Sometimes it's portrayed as a toxic thing. She's not really a bad person, but she definitely has a lot of kind of like vain things about her personality. She finds a lot of I guess you could say, trying to think of what the best word is, but like a verification in the fact that all these people online like her. And it kind of stands in for a lot of things she needs in her life. A lot of like, she's a pretty lonely person. She only has one friend, um, and even with her, she's always bickering and kind of taking her for granted and stuff like that. Um, so this person, this Remy Do, eventually draws the attention of basically a super evil stalker person who wants to kill her just because of their weird cycle. Now there is explanations for all of this stuff. There is explanations for who the stalker person is, their motivations, but at first it's very plain, very straightforward. The whole spooky aspect of the story, at least in the beginning, is you share way too much stuff about yourself on social media, and it puts yourself at a huge risk. There's a part in the story where the cop starts ranting at her, and he has I mean the cop is a huge asshole character, but he has a good point in that, like, he says, so what, you have 1 million followers, you think that makes you a famous person? Real famous people have bodyguards and people that protect them. You're like a nobody who's just constantly broadcasting yourself and telling everybody where you are all the time. um, so I thought that was a very sobering moment for that character when they kind of realized that, like, they're very internet famous. It's a big deal, and this kind is basically their career, but they're not actually a famous person that's gonna have the protection of fame, and all that stuff. So I guess I'll say that I actually enjoyed Killstagram quite a bit. It was a pretty fun story, even though it was really dark and grimy and gross and ugly and toxic. It's all this like all the really toxic stuff about the internet culture is used as plot points in Killstagram. But like I said, it's heightened to such a level that it kind of became funny and comical to me sometimes. So it was generally just a fun kind of horror romp. That's the way I felt about it. I found it kind of fun. It was really easy to read through, and it was definitely a page turner or page scroller, whatever you want to call it. Amber, how did you feel about it?
So I actually, I let me think about how to phrase this really. I started reading this in the morning, not yesterday, but the previous Saturday, and I blew through almost all of the episodes in like 2 hours, just like laying in bed, like scrolling constantly, having to figure out what was going next. It's definitely, like you said, a cautionary tale about what you share on social media, especially live. Like posting things while you're still there is generally not a good idea, anyways. Or I know I'm guilty of it, but like, and I'm not a celebrity, so I don't care. But if I go on a trip, like when we went to New York, I tagged on like my personal Facebook, that I was flying to New York with Robert. So I guess everybody like could have broken into my house at that point because neither of us were there. But
I have noticed
yeah,
that
and
sometimes when I go to movie theater with you, I get tagged on Facebook or something. It's like I'm in so and so. I'm like, no, nobody can know. I need to be anonymous. I don't really care about it either, but it is something that you do that I don't really have that I don't really have that habit of tagging myself in places. And you do definitely have that habit sometimes. It's I guess it's fun. It's fun to like just tag, right?
yeah, I mean, I don't do it often. And when I do, it's usually because I'm like really excited about something I'm doing with somebody.
Oh, so
But
it's my fault,
it's
huh? Okay.
well, you just got to be an awesome friend and go see all these cool things with me. So that's what happens. But I mean, as far as Killstagram, it was a wild ride. I told myself very early on that I was so happy I did not start reading at night, which is usually when I read manhwa. Like I'll read manhwa right before I go to bed or first thing when I wake up. And depending on like when new episodes drop, I could not have read this at night. I would not have slept. um, but I did love it a lot until I got to like the last five-ish episodes. I was really disappointed with the choice that the author made.
I think I know
But
what you should talk
otherwise,
about.
I devoured it.
Let's wait a little bit on talking about that.
Yeah.
And first let's talk a little bit. Let's actually do a couple content warnings, which I guess I should have done at the very start of the conversation. Um, this story goes very very dark as far as the stuff that can happen to somebody with an online experience, cyberbullying, but there's also a lot of like regular bullying, a lot of stuff, people being ostracized, um, physically harassed, beaten up, and there is a lot of suicide stuff in this book. It's a very heavy subject matter that happens, and it's I guess it's a criticism of the book. I would say even the book gives you all the content warnings you would ever need. Excuse me. However, um, it still uses this stuff as pretty. I mean, I guess it's not any different than what a soap opera does or a Lifetime movie does, but it still uses this really heavy subject matter for very cheap drama. So, huge disclaimer about the book that like I'm not. I guess I'm not so happy that it did this a lot as often as it did it. Um, but it's kind of important for the characters in the long run. I think um, Remy Do's character arc in the long run is basically learning about being complicit and what she participates in that could perpetuate negativity, um, to a ridiculous extent, in my opinion. Because yeah, we can all be toxic online, but at the same time, like her character revelation, basically where her character goes, is to be like, where did I go wrong? And she takes it all the way to like, I went wrong because I was born. I should have never been born. Like that's how deep like the self-loathing goes in this book, um, which is really harsh, and it's something that people do feel and deal with sometimes. People with depression and people with a whole loads of issues of guilt and it's just tons of stuff. This book can definitely affect you in a very negative way if you let it. Like I said, I found the book fun. I know I'm sounding like a heartless bastard by saying that because, like I said, it's so dramatic and over the top that I just found it entertaining in in most of the ways. Um, but yeah, I don't know how you feel, excluding the stuff that happens at the very end. There's just kind of like an extra character reveal that happens. That's a little bit cheap, and it ties into some really bad tropes. But not thinking about that. I guess how did you feel about all the grimy, toxic stuff that the book had going on?
I mean, yeah, it's definitely a gore fest for sure. You will see chopped up bodies. I do think that in some of the more extremely heavy content episodes, they did include the phone number for the suicide hotline, as well as in one episode they included a link to glad.org. I think it was very important that they included those in there, and like a disclaimer about if you are like not feeling in your right of mind that you need to reach out about this kind of thing. Um, I did also think it was interesting that the last two episodes employed music. It was my first time having music overlaid on a webtoon, and
Yes.
that was definitely, it gave it a different vibe, and I liked it. But it also it made it much more heartfelt to just kind of have that piano music in the background throughout them.
Yeah, it
Um,
was actually kind of tasteful. It was actually kind of tasteful the way it was done because we will talk about it a lot more, but the webtoon platform can use animation and music and audio cues to for various ways, usually in jump scares and the stuff we're going to talk about. Excuse me, I'm coughing again. Um, but this was the example where it kind of overlaid music throughout the chapter, and I felt it was pretty well done.
yeah, and as far as what you were saying earlier about Remy and her personality, at the very beginning, Remy was not a likable person. Like as you were saying, where she got like her followers just automatically, she didn't incite her followers to go pick on this person for moving her bag or whatever it was. But it's just like the way that people will do something, whether that person is in the wrong because they're so obsessed with that one celebrity adjacent person. It's insane, and it's very well conveyed throughout the series of all the different trauma and all the different ways that you can be targeted on social media for what you put out there.
But the story was quick to point out that she expected it. She expected that would happen because she's savvy enough. She knows what her audience is like. So she's like, "Oh, like don't worry about it." And sure enough, all these like people came to her defense and started like dogpiling the other person that she was having a real life feud with.
She
Um,
definitely made it clear that it was about like her beauty versus this person that she viewed as unattractive.
right.
Well, what did you generally think as far as like, without getting into the end parts or really spoilers, what did you think that the series did well?
I think I need to step away from my mic for about 20 seconds.
Oh no.
So Amber is just gonna have to just like do 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 do, just I'll be right back.
The miniest break ever. Well, as Dark Fox and I were saying, Killstagram is a very intense series. There is a lot of gore, as I mentioned before, chopped up bodies. But the biggest element throughout most of the series is the fear that women especially can feel when they're being stalked. Whether you're a celebrity or not, stalking happens to anyone, women or not, and it's a terrifying experience. knowing that someone's watching you, that they either want to hurt you or do other inappropriate things to you. It's nothing that anyone should ever have to go through. This series is very strong at highlighting that, but it's also not just one person.
Hey, sorry, I'm back.
You're back, yay! I was talking about how this series also deals with stalking.
Yes.
Oh,
Stalking is basically like the main point of terror that this series, or I guess the main um, real life point of terror this series deals with, to the point where it becomes like a serial killer type thing, where somebody's actually chasing after you with a knife, which happens a lot in this series as well.
a lot of knife violence and a chainsaw at one point.
Yeah, it's actually pretty impressive how much, um, I guess you could say how much they draw the story out, because there's multiple moments in the story where Remy Doe is being chased by somebody throughout the night, an extended sequence of chase, and then she escapes and they get arrested, and they're like, conventionally you think the story's over, like okay they caught the bad guy, but then they find some way to either turns out he wasn't the real bad guy, or turns out they escaped and something happened like that. I think we should start getting into full spoilers at this point.
Yeah. There's 3.5 sort of bad guys.
Yes. So damn, this girl really attracted some crazies. So um this
Before we
story,
get into the crazies, though, shout out to MVP bestie Gia Lee, though.
yeah, her best friend was really just like great nurturing friend, and they would bicker and argue, but it was really one of those situations where she wasn't valued as much as she should have been. And she's like the first victim, but the whole time she's like the first victim, right? So
Victim question mark?
yeah, well, the whole time I actually expected her not just to be alive, but I wondered if she was gonna be the main bad guy. If they were gonna do like a jealousy angle where she was like, oh, it turns out that like she hates Remy Doe because she never appreciated her, blah 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 blah, right?
I mean,
Yeah,
there was a lot of times where like it shows, especially in the like the first episode or two, that Gia is constantly warning Remy about like what she's posting online and her safety and like all these potential things that could happen to her that do. But yeah, I mean, what happens to Gia isn't surprising. I thought she was just straight up dead, and I was like, what the what when she wasn't. So
yeah, because she was in that murder basement for like a week or more, or something like.
at least.
One second, I'm gonna open my door for my cat.
Did you let Missy in?
I let him out. He was actually lying by my feet the whole time we were talking. He finally got up and now he wants out. Okay. So, there was two different assailants that went after her, um, and she was protected multiple times by Dohei. Was that his name? Dohei was a boy who worked.
Doha.
Doha. He worked at a convenience store, and they became friends. And it basically becomes the main love interest. Now there's multiple moments in the story where she doubts Doha for multiple reasons, and it's always like
I mean, trauma is the number one reason.
yeah, and then it's always like a false alarm, right? Like, oh, no, turns out Doha is like a good guy. Oh, I should trust and love him. Turns out he's actually the worst guy. He is the main bad guy. Spoiler alert. And one of the guys, the second guy that tried to chase and kill her, was actually a good guy. He was just, I guess he's like slow. Like the story is kind of vague. They say that nobody trusts him because he's ugly and scary looking. But then they also say that
He did.
they call him slow or something like that, or stupid. I forget what. So I think they implied that he has some sort of disability.
Yeah, he definitely seemed kind of like, well, definitely mentally unstable of in some sort of capacity, because he thought that chasing after her with a chainsaw was rational. um, but this gentleman, he was living in a homeless situation, and he idolized Remy because she asked him if he was okay when she saw him on the street at one point. And that just became an obsession and following her around, and then eventually wanting to ask her out and make sure she's okay when he notices she has stalkers because he's stalking her, but in a better way, if that's possible. But yeah, he's a very creepy person and goes about his interests in all the wrong ways.
Yeah, it's pretty silly that they try to spin this character who chased after her after she would be stabbing him in the leg and hurting him, and he'd be like, "I'm gonna get you," and he just like he chases after her. Turns out he was a good guy, and he was trying to protect her from Doha, which was always like right around the corner somehow. He was always like right around the corner about to get her, and he was just misunderstood. So the big thing with Remy's backstory is that she was an orphan, so she was bullied a lot, and she has huge trust issues because one of the teachers that was protecting her turns out was working with the bullies to like, I guess,
Sexually harass
yeah,
her.
sexually assault her. But her friend was
Yeah,
like,
it was assault.
yeah, her friend was like the only person who was actually on her side and protected her and basically like exposed everybody who was trying to assault her.
They weren't even actually friends at that point, though. That's how they became friends.
Yeah, because she's like that clutch of a good character. So so that happens, and she always has this huge like trust issue because of that, and also her abandonment issues because she was abandoned when she was a young girl. So that's why she was struggling to trust Doha a lot. Turns out she was right to distrust him.
Well,
Okay,
before we get in too much about Doha, though,
okay.
I have to ask, did you always think that there was something fishy about Doha?
I knew there was, I knew there was gonna be some sort of rug pull. I didn't know if it was gonna be with Doha or if it was gonna be with her friend.
So what got me? Because like they almost tricked me. I almost thought that maybe Doha was okay and that things would work out all right. But then when um, what's his name? Man Lee, the homeless stalker friendly guy, when he was chasing her on the roof with the chainsaw and stuff like that, it panned to his foot at one point, and it was the same foot that she had stabbed the guy that was in a clown costume, and his foot wasn't bloody or like destroyed at all. So at that point, I'm like, nah, Doha's it.
Yeah, I think we should talk about Doha. Doha is the big plot reveal that kind of ruined. Yeah, I want to say ruined the story, but it's really iffy and it's really problematic. And help me out, Amber, if I get any of the mechanics wrong. But Doha earlier in the story talks about his sister and how his sister was somebody who was stalked, and the stalking really affected her and she became like a recluse. That's why he cares so much about Remy Dole, because he sees a lot of her sister in her. Turns out that was all bullshit. The whole sister storyline was kind of a red herring, because Doha is in fact his sister. They kind of had like gender reassignment, or they must have had some sort of procedure because I forget if they imply or what they imply, but they're basically transgender, Not really super specific on whether they did that just for the crimes, or if they did that because they actually have some sort of identification with the male gender or anything like that. They're not explicit about it. It's one of the problems is that like it's just used as like really gross fodder drama stuff in the story. Um, and the reason why they hate Remy Do is because Remy Do she works at a cosmetic surgery clinic, um, and she blames Remy Do for a bad surgery, a botched cosmetic surgery on her, and she tried to put up an online video. This is something that happens a lot in the story, where you put up an online video as like a call out, half protecting yourself, half advocating for yourself, half calling somebody else out. Um, and then it backfired on her when Remy Dole came back and did her own response video to it, and the public got all behind Remy Dole, and then she had to drop out of school. Her sister had to drop out of school. Her mom basically ruined her whole family because she became so ostracized for being this woman who basically tried to call out, falsely call out. The public decided she falsely tried to call out somebody for something they didn't really do. It was all her fault because she didn't wait long enough for her surgery to heal and stuff like that. There was nothing wrong with the surgery. Blah blah blah. It wasn't botched. It was her.
Although,
Yeah.
although to be fair, Remy had nothing to do with the surgery. That was all the horrible doctor.
Yes. There's extra bad stuff, extra trust issues that Remy has because this doctor who kind of took her in and let her work at his clinic was very abusive and would use her as a scapegoat a lot of times for stuff like this.
A lot of manipulation for sure.
Yeah. So, um, yeah. So she vows revenge against Remy Doll, and she goes on like basically a killing spree where she starts killing a bunch of the followers of Remy Doll, and had just this whole big plan to eventually um, kill Remy Doll herself as the assumed identity of her non-existent brother. Her brother was never a person until she switched personalities, or however you want to describe it. Um, it's really messy, and it doesn't make that much sense the way it's portrayed. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else to add to it besides that.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why, like, okay, so until we got to that last 5 episodes and that reveal, I was really enjoying the series, but it left such a sour taste on how they handled it with the harmful representation uh, that I can't really, like, in good conscience, recommend this series to people now. Um, so when they revealed that Do became Doha, it wasn't about embracing their identity and like becoming a man because that's how they identify. It was completely out of revenge. At least that's how I read it. And creating a trans villain for just revenge villainy is extremely harmful representation. At the same time, I know this is a different culture and I'm sure they have different values than what we have here in the US, but it still just reads really bad to me.
So bad, even the dog doesn't like it.
Yeah, sorry for the bug.
It's okay. Dogs gotta bark sometimes. Um, yeah, it's pretty gross, and the end is pretty bad. And so Remy Do basically 100% emphasizes with the main villain and basically says, you deserve to hate me, and I still love you. I don't care who you are. I was happiest with you when we were together. Let's run away. Let's run away, leave everything behind, and just live our own lives. Fuck social media. Fuck everything. We'll be together. And this is
While they're surrounded in a basement full of bodies that's on fire.
yes, and as this is happening, um, the cops and a bunch of her followers are pinpointing her location because she was previously streaming and live streaming. So they know where she's at. So they're running and trying to find her because she knows she's literally being attacked by a psycho killer right now. So basically, they come to this moment where they're look like they're gonna reconcile, and she's gonna forgive Doha for all of those psycho murder stuff he's done, and maybe Doha will forgive her for all the transgressions that they perceived they had done. But then Doha gets gunned down by the cops, and she is crying and screaming, "No, why did you shoot? Why did you shoot?" And her followers are like filming this, so there's a public backlash against her for having like Stockholm syndrome, and emphasizing with a psycho murderer, and then it ends with her like killing herself in a hospital room. Not so much for the public backlash, but because she could never be happy, because Doha is now gone, and she feels highly responsible for it. So, very strong, and by strong I mean just like I don't mean like good. I mean like very um, palpable subject matter in the ending. Um, yeah, I don't I think it's kind of a bad ending.
No, I would definitely agree it is a bad ending. Other like even even if for some reason they didn't do all of the harmful representation that we just talked about, and they still just ended it with her slitting her wrist in the hospital room, it's still a bad ending. There's no way that I mean I can't say there's no way, but like story wise, there should have been some resolution, some therapy, some way to overcome what had happened, or at least like a way to continue the story. So, weirdly enough, and I didn't tell you this, I wanted to wait until you read it because I couldn't say anything about it without it ruining the ending. There's actually a season 2 of this series.
Really?
Yes. I don't know how because Remy's dead, Doha's dead. But there's the second season. It's not out in English. I think it's in Spanish and um, probably Korean, and I would assume, and then I think Thai, if I read correctly, but not in English yet. But I
Well,
don't know anything else about it.
Remy could have survived because there's a lot of that in this story where it looks like somebody's dead, and then they're not dead.
That's fair.
So Remy could have easily survived. What the story goes from there, I have no idea. It'd be silly for her just to be like, "Oh, another stalker's after her, another one." Like maybe she becomes a
That's
stalker
true. I
person.
mean, she was already in the hospital. There wasn't that much blood in the last frame, and her heart monitors would have been going off, I assume, if she was still hooked up to them. If you're talking, I can't hear you.
I'm not talking. I'm eating.
Eating while you cast? How dare you? But yeah,
Yeah.
so season 2, I'm curious, but I don't know if I'm that curious to try to like find a way to read it in Spanish because that's the only language I could probably figure out what's going on. But yeah, the series started out great and then it just ended so horribly.
I think we should start wrapping up, but before we go away from um, Killstagram, I do want to talk about the art a little bit. I'm gonna hold my phone up to the camera a few times, like I'm doing right now. This is from the first chapter where they're establishing kind of her vanity, and she's talking about, I'm so pretty. That's why people love me. People give me free stuff because I'm pretty. Because she's like an influencer, so people want her clicks and stuff like that. Um, yeah, I'd say the art works fine. It's definitely what I would consider like, uh, okay. I think the best way to say is that I would have considered this like bad art in the past, but now I'm not so um, I'm not so militant about it. I'm not I'm like I'm I think the art actually works really well for what it's trying to convey. Let me try and find a quick chapter with horror stuff happening because the horror stuff is actually pretty effective. Oh, this is actually like a pretty funny set piece where the that is what the second stalker character looks like. Man Lee. He looks like a walking skeleton person. Um, and there's a lot of that. It's a lot of like spooky looking crazy guys chasing after like the pretty girl. This is a sequence where he leaped. You can see him leaping there across the roof um, because he was chasing after her. Mind you, this is remember a character that was actually a good guy, and he was trying to help her. Um, but yeah, I think the art is effective, even though it's using a style that I really don't like, and I'm really not like accustomed to reading. This is the first time I've read a big story with this kind of art.
I definitely think the colors are used very well throughout the series. It's like an interesting choice on some of them, but at the same time, there's only so many colors you can use in gory basements.
I'll say.
Now, I have to ask before we switch to the next one, because this is a Soju want to read manhwa crossover. We have a rating scale. It's a 3-point scale: Bibim, flop, Jujang, mid, or Bulgogi. How do you think this ranked?
Um, I gotta say, Gold Key. Is that the best one?
That is, the Bulgogi is the best one.
Yeah, yeah, because I quite liked it. It was a fun time. Just heavy caveat for the stuff that happens at the end.
It's fair. It's fair. I think this is gonna be probably my first like Jujang mid, just because the beginning was like such a strong start, but I can't get past that ending. It's too much.
That is 100% fair. The ending is kind of bad.
But in other words, scroll if you dare.
Sounds like we're talking about scroll if you dare now.
I'm guessing you're still eating.
Eating, drinking, wiping. I'll talk to stuff.
Okay, well, while you're eating, I guess I can fill a little bit. So, Scroll If You Dare is an anthology series. It's 27 episodes. Each episode is by a different author. Most episodes employ music, and unfortunately, unlike Dar Fox, I assume my audio wasn't working for Scroll If You Dare.
Really?
Yeah, so I know that I missed a lot because of that. I got to read about some of the audio cues I missed in the comment sections because Webtoon, if you didn't notice, has a comment section for all of their series. And some of the series also had like animated GIFs or actions that would happen at a certain point as you scroll, which is just a very good use of the medium. But yeah, I was really frustrated that I didn't have music for mine because that definitely would have heightened the experience, I believe.
It would have for some of them. Some of them use it very well. The other ones are very cheesy and just kind of like goofy. Um, this anthology series I actually really liked, and this might be one of my first recommendations for somebody like in my limited experience with like Korean comics. If somebody were to say, "Well, what should I read?" I would because there's so much interactivity with this one. It's the best example so far as to what the medium is like and what it can be. And because it has a large variety of artists and stories, some of them probably are misses, but at least a few of them will be hits with the person. So I would probably recommend they read Scroll if you're there, because there's a lot there. There's a lot there that they can experience and see. You know what they like, what they don't like. Um, Almost every single story had audio cues or some sort of interactivity with it. And by interactivity, I just mean that like the page would animate somehow as you scroll through. Um, there was a couple stories that were kind of just obnoxious with it, where they would have like too many repeating sound effects that weren't effective, but most of them used it in a very effective, subtle way, where they would wait and use it in key moments, and it worked really well.
Now, because every episode is a different story, I assume that you don't want to talk about all 27 of them, and I honestly can't remember everything about all 27 of them.
Oh no,
Um,
yeah, absolutely not.
but I did make notes about 5 episodes in specific that I was interested in.
Which one did you highlight?
So, I mean, I guess the first thing, it's not really that I particularly liked that one, but the second episode, Evergreen Nursing Home, is by the same creator as Killstagram, Young. So I thought that was an important call out since we read Killstagram as well.
I actually liked that one a fair bit. That one's classic body switch horror kind of thing. Um, and it actually kind of, thinking about it, kind of fits into some of the vanity toxic themes of Killstagram. Maybe that is that author's forte.
That's just their vibe, I guess.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, and I guess that episode is actually the one that is the cover art on the Webtoon app for this series too.
Yeah, that one's basically about some sort of nursing home that allows young children, and by I mean teenagers, to help the older nursing home residents. And in this helping the old people, they kind of build character. So it's kind of like also like a correction camp for troubled teens.
The help is not by choice.
Yeah. So it's like the main character is somebody who would get in fights in school, and she doesn't really respect her mom, or her dad, or your stepmom. I should have said. So she gets sent to this camp, slash nursing home, and there's barbed wire fences. It's kind of weird. The vibe is weird and off, and the lady in charge is kind of weird and spooky. And she eventually starts to turn around when the old lady she's assigned to is really nice to her. It's always like doesn't want her getting hurt, wants to protect her, and she starts to really like the old lady. Turns out it was because the old lady was gonna switch bodies with her. And that's why she was so protective
Steal
of the
her
young.
youth.
Yeah, that's why she was so protective of the young girl. um, and
Didn't want her new body getting bruised.
yeah, exactly. So she gets to be young again, and she goes off to live with like the main character's mom and dad, while the old lady's trapped in the nursing home now in an old body, all sad and stuff. So, classic, Bizarro World, Twilight Zone episode ending. I like that one quite a bit.
Which one stood out to you as like your favorite or most interesting one of the series?
That's a great question. I think it's called Them. Let me see. Yeah, there's one called Them that I'm looking through right now. That's about these weird entities that live in our world that you kind of have to ignore, because if they see you, or if you can see them and you make eye contact with them, then they can see you. and it's just like the character design of the monsters that are hanging around all the world, and they're literally like there's big ones, there's small ones. I thought the monster design in that one was really really good. I like the art in this one. I'm trying to find a good. Okay, so this is an okay page I could show off. Holding up to the
Hey,
camera.
while you're pulling that up, that was actually one of the five that I had written down about. I thought it was really interesting that it's very similar in a way to the manga series Miyako-chan.
Yes.
So if you're a Miyako-chan fan, you should read episode 8 called Them.
Yeah, and Meriko-chan, she sees ghosts, right? But she has to ignore them because she doesn't ignore them that they can kind of attack her. Um, so in this one, it's not specifically ghosts. It could be ghosts or it could be alternate dimension creatures or beings, who knows what. Um, but there's a character very similar to Meriko-chan, who's a young girl who can see them and she's already knows about them, so she knows to ignore them. The victim of the story is I forget if he's a doctor or something, who got his eyes activated and switched on to basically to see them, and he didn't know how to react, so he eventually gets killed by these creatures. I think it was on this one. Another one I liked. I forget what it was called, but it was the one about the spooky app where this girl went.
Yes, I
Yeah.
have that one too.
Okay. I was
So
so far we're 3 for 3.
heck yeah.
What was called for that one?
So that one is episode 6. It's called I See You.
Okay.
So
Yes.
the reason I liked that one so much is because it had such Pokemon Go vibes for me.
Yeah. It's basically a Pokemon Go, except you're capturing like ghosts and cryptids. And like the main character in this story, she was basically the first one in Korea to capture like a level 4 apparition. So she got a lot of clicks and views for that, right? Because she uploaded online. And she was obsessed with capturing the first level 5 apparition, right? Um, but the this app is actually evil. You actually are seeing real ghosts, and the level 5 apparition was able to hurt her and kill her. And then she appears on the map as a level 1 apparition because now she's dead. So it's a good little wraparound kind of ending to it.
Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting take on a kind of like Pokemon Go adjacent thing. I really liked like seeing them hunt down the ghosts and then knowing that something was going to go wrong with them. All right, do we got a 4 for 4?
I'm looking at Phantom Eye. Phantom Eye.
No.
Phantom Eye was kind of similar to the whole idea that like if you look at it and if you respond to it, it will attack you. So that one was okay, and it had like a kind of a pretty boy shaman character who was kind of like the villain. You know the one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that one for the sequence where um, they're knocking on her door, and she thought it was like her family, but it was actually the apparition trying to get her to respond. I thought that sequence was pretty creepy. And that was a sequence where they employed like knocking. The audio of the knocking was playing on the phone, and it was pretty effective because it got harder and harder as they were getting more and more insistent when she wouldn't answer, and the ghost or monster thing was getting more and more restless. So yeah. All right. What's your fourth?
So I also have episode 4, The Pigeon. That one I really amused me because the way that he was constantly like scratching his neck as he slowly transformed into a pigeon after his boss calls him that was straight up like Tomoro Shigaraki from My Hero Academia. Just the way that he was like violently scratching his neck.
Turns out he's the pigeon all along.
Pigeon all along. I also I will have actually. I thought about there's a couple others that I might mention after this fifth one, but I think the one that I enjoyed the most, probably just for like concept and storytelling, was episode 21, which is called Upside Down. That
Yes,
one,
that was good.
yeah, this guy has the ability to see when someone is about to die because their soul is visible over their body upside down. And he ends up on a bus full of people and then sees that everybody's body or soul or whatever is upside down except for this one pregnant woman in the back of the bus. And so he forces her to switch seats with him. But when he wakes up in the hospital, like the only survivor from this bus crash that happens, turns out his hospital mate is the husband of the pregnant woman that died. I thought it was a really interesting story. It of course did not have a happy ending, but just the concept of that power and how it worked was really interesting.
Yeah, it was a really well communicated situation where like when somebody's healthy and safe, their body and soul are in harmony. But when they are sick or dying or they're in danger of about to die, the soul and the body are not lined up. So you can see like almost like a vibration effect on these individuals. And when somebody's like really about to die in like a horrific accident, they're so unaligned that it's actually upside down. So that was very well communicated. It reminded me a lot of it's kind of like a different version of Final Destination, of being able to see that there's going to be a big tragedy. And I think
Yeah.
the kicker at the end of the guy saw the woman who was uh, sitting in the right seat for her to survive, and he took her seat. So that was pretty funny. Slash, slash sad, of course.
Of course tragic,
Yeah.
because both the woman and the unborn child like no longer exist because of him. Um, the other two that I want to mention are episode 14, Backrooms number 0605,
Yes.
and episode 20, Poppy's Mom. So,
Wait. Hello, Amber.
yep, sorry, I forgot to hold the button.
Okay, that's
So
good.
where did I cut off?
I didn't hear you say anything after Poppy's mom.
Okay. But I did say Backrooms.
Yeah, backwards and Poppy mom.
Okay. Okay. So I don't know about you. I assume that you had audio cues that you could hear if maybe Backrooms had some, but I was getting so sick and dizzy and tired of seeing these checkered rooms animated to never ending hallways over and over and over.
I don't remember if it had the audio cues, but I remember the checkerboard animation of him running down the checkerboards. So you did get the animations?
Yeah, I did get animations. I just couldn't hear the audio on that.
Okay. Yeah. I like backroom stuff. You know me. I played that video game. I uploaded the YouTube video of it. That one was pretty weak as far as backroom stuff goes. It wasn't that interesting. Um, and they had a couple jump scares, which I guess were kind of fun, but like they weren't that effective. So it's kind of neat just to see backrooms content in this collection, but I've seen way cooler, way spookier backroom stuff than that.
Oh, that episode definitely was not scary at all to me. I was just annoyed by it.
That's what I wanted to
But
make.
but what is scary though is Poppy's mom, episode 20. Like I'm so terrified for this lady and this woman who assumes that her dog is her old dog that passed away, or if she's just trolling because she keeps doing it to other people at the end.
Now there were two stories with like those tiny poodle dogs, right? There was Poppy's mom,
Yes.
and then there was one about the stray dog or the dog with the homeless guy, and that one
Yeah,
was
I
even
was
more
trying not to
horrifying.
think about that one because
Yes,
that one gutted me.
Yes, there's some dead dog stuff that happens in that story, which I was surprised to see because like in most American storytelling, they really don't want you to see dead dogs or think about dead dogs because it's really you know
It hits hard.
it hits hard. Um, but I thought it was funny that there's two stories about like these little poodle dogs. I wonder if they're just a really popular breed in Korea, very common or something.
I don't know. I mean, the I don't remember what the name of the episode for the other one was, but yeah, seeing that, I mean, at least they didn't show us like much gore. They just saw you just showed like the the leg and the blood dripping off of the homeless man's dog's mouth on the other one.
It's
So it's very clear that
or sorry, no, episode 15. Mimi, Mimi, Mimi.
Mimi, that's right. Okay, yeah. Mimi was the little dog that got eaten by the other dog, and it was terrifying. And I tried to just black that out of my memory. Thanks for that.
You're welcome. Um, but it was funny at the end of Poppy's mom, where this guy got a dog just so they can be like an influencer online, and they're like, "Bro, what's up with this? I thought dogs were supposed to get a lot of views," and then he was annoyed. I should have got a what would he say a corgi. I should have got a corgi, but then he gets contacted by Poppy's mom, so it starts all over again.
So it's just gonna be a cycle with her.
Dog people, and let me tell you.
All right. Well, um, is there anything else that stood out to you in Scroll If You Dare, or are you ready to rate it and move to the last one?
I think I'm ready to rate it. I did want to emphasize that there's a lot of stuff in here. Just because we're not talking about it, I'm honestly just not thinking about it at the moment. But I did kind of enjoy it while I was reading them. Um, so, strong recommendation for Scroll if you're there.
Yeah, I don't remember which one it was, but there was one that had more of like a historical setting. But I thought that one had like gorgeous art, especially. But overall, I liked it. This one is not quite a mid, but it's definitely not a bulgogi for me. Um, but I did generally enjoy it.
Big for me.
All
All the
right,
way.
so when I get you to read some like super awesome bulgokis, in my opinion, you're gonna be blown away.
Yeah, I gotta rate him something higher. We gotta come up with a third rating, a fourth rating.
I keep like joking with Marion that we need to add some more options to our scale because at one point, actually, I think it was the episode 3 when we were talking about the boxer. I was like, guys, I need to talk about this in steak terms because I need more tiers. So I ended up like rating it medium rare because it wasn't mid to me, and like rare's the best to me. So I'm like, yeah, it's a medium rare steak kind of episode. You're still eating, aren't you?
No, I'm looking at my phone. I was just looking. One last look before we move on to Webtoon at midnight. So I kind of feel bad for Webtoon at midnight because it's kind of just a lesser version of Scroll If You're There. Because one, we didn't have that many chapters. I think there was only 6 available episodes, and two, um, most of its stories I think were 3 episodes long, or 2 episodes long. So we didn't have even amongst 6 episodes, we didn't have 6 stories. They were to be continued. And I think for a lot of these stories, the tighter they are, the shorter they are, the more effective they are. So some of these just kept on going, and I kind of didn't care. Um, so
Yeah, I mean, this one, it's a very much a new thing that they seem to have done for this Halloween season. where it is still an anthology series, but it's 2 to 4 episodes for each story. So we only read the first kind of anthology subset, which was episodes 1 through 4, and it has a super long title. So it's I bought extra time for my dying fiance. No one can know the price I paid. This one is not a Korean comic, or at least not to my understanding. The story is by Gabri Rivera, and the art is by Fozzie Chang and Kodak Entertainment.
Okay, yeah. So this was 4 chapters, 4 episodes long.
What
I
did you think of it?
I thought the art looked good. I like the art. I like the character design. I thought it was too basic and it kind of went on too long. If it was 1 chapter, it would have been like fresher. But it's basically about this woman whose partner is dying from a disease, and they get this weird, sketchy website where they're able to buy time for them. They literally pay like $700 for 10 years, but the catch is they had to take life for somebody else.
And if you don't count that life force, like $700 for 10 years, 1400 for 20, 2100 for 30, that's a steal.
Yeah, no, it's pretty good, except that it's kind of, I guess it's scamming the users because um it gives you a binary choice to steal from her cat or her doctor, I think it was, or something like that. So
The
she
cat was in every decision, and I was very upset about that. The cat
yeah
is named Nugget, and I'm
yeah
like, don't you dare. Don't you click
yeah.
it.
So she chose the doctor, and the doctor, he's like an older guy, but he was definitely gonna live 10 years. But the moment she chose the doctor died. So it's so like I assumed my first thought was that it just took 10 years from his life and killed him instantly, but no, that wasn't the case. The moment he died, she had to pick somebody else because that life force expired, which is a big coincidence. So I think that was a big scam. I think this evil website
That's
was just
absolutely
scam.
scam.
This evil website was just a big. I would have given this evil website top marks because it worked, but it's just a scam. So it just wants to keep taking life force from people. And at the end, like they turn on each other, um, because she chooses herself as she starts dying, and she's like, "Oh, save me!" And she's like, "I'm not gonna do that." She runs away, and she gets the option to refund it, so she refunds. Um,
And it's not clear if, like, well, it's not 100% clear if she does the refund, I think. Like, her hand is, like, hovering over it, and I think that's the last thing you see.
I thought she pressed it. I thought she.
She could have. My memory is, like, a little vague from over a week ago.
So yeah, not like a turbo story, but it would have been more effective if it was just 1 chapter. I honestly feel like it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely was kind of, like, pushing myself through it to get through all 4 episodes. As I said, I was like, stop trying to sacrifice Nugget. Nugget's not leaving. But yeah, I was a little like bored with it, and it did seem kind of simplistic in a way. I wasn't overly engaged with it.
Yeah, and then the second story in this is the one about the funeral crashing, right? What the hell was that one about? I don't even remember. That's the last story I read, and I don't remember what was happening in that one.
I didn't even get to that one. I kept it just to the 4 episodes.
Oh really? Oh wait, were those not even free when you read them?
The I think the first 2 episodes of that one were, but since we were only reading free content, I didn't start the next story because the whole version of it wasn't free.
Okay, yeah, because number 7 just became free like an hour ago, basically.
No, okay, well I would have read that if I knew.
Well, I mean, whatever. Who cares? I don't. I read it today this morning, but I totally forget what it was. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't have. I had a pretty great experience reading the other 2, but I didn't have a great experience reading webtoons at midnight. That was just kind of whatever.
Yeah, that one I could have absolutely been okay if I never read it, and I wish that I could just like delete it off my reading history on Webtoon, but hopefully it'll just kind of fall off eventually.
Okay, I think we should just wrap it up because we talked a lot of details in the ones that we liked, especially Instagram. Um, but I think we're kind of done, and I think that um, what's the rating for under mid?
The mid is the Jajang mid.
What about the one below mid?
Bibim flop, which for
A bit
me,
flop.
Webtoon at midnight, at least the first 4 episodes, was a Bibim flop for me.
Same
I
here.
wasn't scared at all.
Same here. It's a bit flop. But bad time.
I wasn't scared, and they tried to kill off the cat more than once. Stunned.
Just a suggestion of the cat dying. Okay. Um, so on manga machinations, usually what we do is we uh, we order them, and in a triple dip we order them as to which ones do we like the most and least, and if we would continue reading them if we had the option. I think it's pretty obvious that I like Killsgram quite a bit. I'll put that one at my top. If I had the option to read more, I will read more just to see like where they take the story because I don't know how they'll continue it. Um, the Scroll If You're There, second and the third is the Webtoon at Midnight.
I would agree with that order. Killstagram, I'm mad at it, but I'm interested and curious enough to try to read a second season.
And as far as reading more of Scroll If You're There, I mean, yeah, as long as they're of that quality, general quality, yeah, I would read more of those anthologies. I had fun with that one. Not so much with Webtoon at Midnight.
Yeah, the last one's a pass.
Anything else you want to mention before I do the whole wrap up speech, Amber?
As far as how you can reach us at Soju Wanna Read Manhwa?
Yes, why don't you do that?
All right, so if you are a fan of Korean comics and you like what you heard on this crossover episode with us today, this Halloween spooky, you like my ghost hosting, you can catch us over on Spotify. We're Soju Wanna Read Manhwa. And you can also reach us on Twitter and Instagram at Soju Manhwa Pod. We also have a Gmail for questions, recommendations, anything really you want to email us, which is sojuwannareadmanhwa@gmail.com. If you want to reach out to me specifically, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ARGBombshell. I'm also on Twitch and a few other things, but I haven't streamed in forever due to situations. So, yeah, reach out if you have anything, and I always like to hear comments and questions and suggestions.
Cool. Thank you so much, Amber, for doing this podcast with me. It kind of saves us because, as you can tell, all the other hosts were off doing real life stuff. So it was just me, and I really needed some backup. So thank you so much.
I'm always around for the dark experience.
The Darg experience. Go listen to our last vlog on the Manga Mac TV to know what we're talking about with that. We will probably mention it again in the next vlog that we will do when I don't have COVID.
Yeah, stop dying already.
Yeah, I'm a lot better. I'm a lot better. Yeah. So, thank you so much for listening. This concludes this episode of Manga Machinations. If you like this episode, we have a bunch more episodes available in our RSS feed. You can access all of our episodes at mangamachinations.com or go to our Twitter, which is Manga Mac Podcast, at Manga Mac Podcast. That is the same username for Instagram and Threads and Blue Sky, and then so all the social medias of those types should all have at Manga Mac Podcast. So find us that way. You could check out all of our stuff. I already talked about our coffee, but I'll do a quick coffee plug again. ko-fi.com/mangamac. You could donate to us and really help us in our future endeavors. And really help us cover the cost of the manga because, boy, we read a lot of manga and the price really, really adds up over the years. If you have any questions for us, make sure to send us an email. Our email is mangamachinations@gmail.com. And we have our Discord, so don't be afraid to join our Discord. Amber's on there, so we could talk to us. We could have fun, share videos or whatever. Um, I think I covered everything that I needed to cover. Please tune in next week. We'll be reading Witches, like I said before, and I think the whole cast should be back next week. So that's gonna be exciting. I'll be reunited with my castmates. All right. Thank you again, Amber, for podcasting with me. I hope you have a
Thanks for
nice.
having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope you have a nice evening. The rest of this weekend evening.
You too.
Before we gotta go back to work on Monday. Oh,
No.
the worst. And thank you all for listening. Um, have a very good day. Bye bye.
Bye.